Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew de Block, and I'm the AV Tourism Project Manager at BirdLife South Africa. One of our objectives at BirdLife South Africa is to market our country locally and internationally as a premier birding destination. With that in mind, it is my privilege to welcome you to our next session, which I'm sure will be a popular one. At the inaugural Virtual African Bird Fair 2020, we explored some of South Africa's most popular birding destinations. This year, we're taking a different approach and exploring some of the underrated and lesser known sites. In other words, our hidden gems. Lynette Rudman, a birding authority in the Eastern Cape, will be focusing on the Drakensberg edges of Noordeersnek. Rick Nuttall, a professional local bird guide, takes us to Soetdoring Nature Reserve, made semi-famous recently with the arrival of a Madagascan cuckoo, but with so much more to offer. And finally, Dr. Wim de Klerk of the Agulhas Plain Birding Project reveals the incredible diversity to be found at the southern tip of our continent. Please enjoy.
Hi everybody, welcome to my presentation on my favorite birding area of the Eastern Cape, the Eastern Cape Highlands, a part of the southern Drakensberg, and stunning birds to find there, all the high altitude birds, and the scenery is spectacular around every corner. If you with people that aren't birders, they will enjoy the scenery, and if you're a birder, you'll enjoy both the scenery and the birds. Now, this is the area that I'm going to be talking about today. It's far bigger than I've shown on the map, but I've only got time to talk about this small area. Now, we use Rhodes Village as the base, and we do day trips from there, but you can stay anywhere. There's accommodation all over that area on farms. Rhodes Village has lots of cottages that you can hire. They're really stunning. Tennerhead Lodge and Spa, it's quite a lovely upmarket place to stay, and Tiffendale Ski Resort is also awesome, highly recommended. Now, I'm going to be talking about the Rhodes, Noordeersnek, Tennerhead Lodge and Spa and the Tiffendale area, and I will briefly touch on the Berkeley East area. It is an area where we find southern bald ibises, and I know a lot of birders want to see that bird. So the Berkeley East area is good for that. Look in cultivated lands amongst the hardy-dar ibises, and you'll often see them there. And then across to the right, the Maclear area, which is now called Ngqangqu. The wattled crane can be seen there quite often, as well as the other two cranes, the blue crane and the grey-crowned crane. So we won't be talking much about those other areas for now. Which are the most sought after birds in that area? Most people ask. And I think hands down, the most number one bird that people want to see is the bearded vulture. It is a very iconic vulture. Not many of them are around. You're most likely to see plenty of Cape vultures when you go there. I'd say the number two bird to see there as well is the mountain pipit, which is seen only in summer months. It's an altitudinal migrant, so in winter it moves down to warmer areas nearby. Also, the Drakensberg rock jumper is also quite sought after, but it's not only found there. Drakensberg siskin, and as I said, wattle crane and southern bald ibis can be seen lower down in Berkeley East and Maclear. Now, those aren't the only sought after birds. I think everyone likes to see ground woodpeckers and yellow-breasted pipits as well. They're very special. Grey-winged francolins, also a good bird to see in that area. And Drakensberg Prinier even though they're seen all the way to East London, they're also quite good birds to see. Plenty of other special birds as well, which many of us don't see every day. Sentinel rock thrushes are seen there in summer months. African rock pipit, you'll often hear them calling early in the morning from a rock on the way up to Nordy's Neck Pass, and also along the pass as well. I've heard them there as well. Fairy flycatchers are incredible in that area because there is not so much bush. They tend to be more confiding and walk around out in the open, like this one in this picture here. It was walking around on rocks near a stream, and I've also seen them sit on those small bushes as well. So wonderful opportunity to see them. Striped flufftails you should see, or hear rather, before you see them in the montane grasslands in that area. And Layard's warbler as well can also be seen there in the more bushy area. Barrett's warblers will be seen lower down at the bottom of Nordy's Neck Pass on the way to Maclear. And in the many like bushy lined streams, you'll get them there in the summer months. They are altitudinal migrants, so in winter they'll be in the thick coastal bush. Banded martins are also very special. You see them hawking insects over grasslands all over that area. Or on the way up to Nordy's Neck Pass, you see them sitting on the wire fences. Also very special martins. Cinnamon-breasted buntings and Cape buntings are seen on the way up to Nordy's Neck Pass. Now, who doesn't like to see raptors? These are three very special raptors that I've seen up there at Nordy's Neck Pass. The bearded vulture, Cape vulture, there are quite plenty of them. And the black harrier, I've seen there as well, hawking over grasslands. I've also seen rock kestrels, jackal buzzards, and rufous-breasted sparrowhawks in the village of Rhodes itself. Now, what is the best time to visit? Many people ask that. Now, it all depends on which birds you want to see. If you want to go and see mountain pipits, then you must go in late spring to early autumn, which is late September to April, like summer months, because they altitudinal migrants. The bearded vulture can be seen all year round. We've heard of people seeing them in May, June, and July of this year. So maybe winter months are better than summer months, because I've often been there in summer and dipped. But it's always luck of the draw there with bearded vultures. Okay, what are the habitats like in that area? As I said, the scenery is stunning. It's just stunning wherever you look. There are high altitude grasslands on top, montane fynbos and bracken, especially in the Tiffindale to Wartrails Road, where this photo was taken. In mountain streams with water from the Lesotho highlands are all over that area and makes that area so special, these small mountain streams, which attract birds as well. And wooded valleys, also the Tiffindale Wartrails Road, very scenic and good for birding. Now I'm going to be featuring two routes. The first route is the Rhodes, twisty, windy route all the way to Nordy's Neck Pass and the nearby Tennerhead Lodge and Spa. Now it's 33 kilometers long, but I advise you to start it very early in the morning, even like just before sunrise. Because by the time you get to Nordy's Neck Pass, if you're a bit late, it can be very windy up there. So we often leave before sunrise and do the route slowly all the way up to the pass. A very short little road to Tennerhead Lodge and Spa. It's about 5 k's from Nordy's Neck Pass. Wonderful place to just sit and relax, and also bird in the grounds as well. And they welcome birders. Then the second route will be 23 k's all the way up to Tiffindale Ski Resort. Both of these routes that I'm featuring are good for high clearance vehicle. You don't have to have a 4x4. But the Tiffindale route has an extremely short and steep pass, which is cemented, but it's extremely steep with very sharp hairpin bends, and it requires an experienced driver to drive that part of the road. When you get on top to, you know, near Tiffindale, it becomes flat, and then it's wonderful, you know, the road's not bad. The very bad road is the one from Tiffindale down to Ward Trails. Stunning scenery and beautiful birding, but it's hardcore 4x4. I saw on the internet recently, it requires experienced 4x4 drivers, but it's well worth doing if you can. Another really bad road is from Nordy's Neck Pass to Maclear. Apparently that is full of rocks and you cannot do it very fast. But the two routes I'm featuring are fine for high clearance vehicles. Okay, now route 1, the roads to Nordy's Neck and Tennerhead Lodge and Spa. Now the first bird most people want to see, as I said, is the bearded vulture. Keep your eyes peeled to the skies, because those birds suddenly appear from behind a mountain and disappear just as fast. You will be very lucky if you find a sheep carcass, which we happened to find in 2014 when I was there. And these are photos from that time. A sheep must have fallen down the mountainside, and the Cape vultures had arrived there first, and the white-necked ravens. But while we were there, we must have spent 3 hours just observing, and 3 juvenile bearded vultures arrived, and they like sat in the wings waiting for their turn. And it was absolutely awesome watching the 2 bearded vultures squabbling with each other, and just the whole scene. There's a juvenile in the middle of this top right picture as well. And all these photos have been taken from Nordy's Neck Pass. Okay, the next bird is mountain pipit. Can be seen on the way up to Nordy's Neck Pass, where it starts getting flat on the sides of the road where the grass is short. In summer months, as I said, they breed up there, and in winter you won't find them, and especially when they like blend with the African pipits lower down where they migrate to. They look very similar. Now, what is the difference? Very briefly, the difference between mountain pipit and African pipit. Now, the first, the most obvious one is the mountain pipit has pink lower mandible. Well, so does the African pipit in winter. But in summer, it has yellow lower mandible. But the way to tell the difference is the African pipit has a yellow gape at all times, winter and summer. So that is one way of telling the difference. I heard that hint from Hugh Chittenden, so it's a good, reliable source. Mountain pipit has buff outer tail feathers, and African pipit has white outer tail feathers. And I won't be going on with the rest of the pointers. We don't have time. Now, other birds that can be found on the roads to Nordy's Neck Pass and Tennerhead Lodge Road, when you start climbing, getting to higher altitudes, you'll get Drakensberg rock jumpers on the rocky outcrops. And there are plenty of those all the way up, especially when you get higher up. Ground woodpeckers, are not plentiful, but they certainly are there. And I've seen them along the pass as well, halfway down the pass. Sentinel rock thrushes are there as well in summer months. They move lower down in winter. African rock pipits you will hear often early in the morning, sitting on a rock like this one that I photographed and singing beautifully from a rock. Actually, about 3 of them came that day and sang. And the background photo is the Nordy's Neck Pass itself. Okay, other good birds seen along the roadside going up to Nordy's Neck Pass are Drakensberg siskins. You often see them sitting on the fence, the wire fence, or feeding on the roadside in the short grass. Drakensberg Prunier in the more sort of lower bushy areas. Grey-winged franklins, you should hear before you see them in the valleys, and you should see them from the road if you look down into the valleys in the grasslands. Fairy flycatchers, as I said earlier, so confiding in that area, walk around out in the open. This photo I took of one just sitting out on a small bush on the Tennerhead Lodge Road. And a very special bird as well that many people want to go and see is the yellow-breasted pipit. They're also altitudinal migrants, so won't be there in winter, and you won't be able to ID them in any case because they lose their breeding plumage. And then they blend in with the other pipits. But in summer months, at the bottom of Nordy's Neck Pass, you find this clumpy grass on both sides of the road and on the hillside on the right-hand side. And that is the preferred habitat. They love that clumpy grass. So the bottom of Nordy's Neck, where it starts flattening out, is where to look in summer. Okay, as I said, both these routes need high clearance vehicles. And yeah, just be careful in winter when there are when there's ice on the roads, especially on Nordy's Neck Pass. A lot of streams like flow down onto the sides of the roads, and it overflows onto the road, and it can be extremely slippery. So be careful of that, or when it has rained a lot, or when it's snowing or sleeting. You need to have your wits about you there. Okay, now route 2, Tiffendale Ski Resort. A well worth visit, even if you're with people that are not birders. There are plenty of activities for non-birders, hikes and all sorts of things. In winter, obviously, they ski and snowboard, but plenty of other opportunities, all sorts of things. And birding is amazing around those chalets there. You get all the regular birds, the high altitude birds, the Drakensberg rock jumper, siskin, and Prunier, Layard's warbler, fairy flycatcher. I've had African snipe in marshy areas going up to Tiffendale, and they were actually drumming and displaying. It was quite awesome. Plenty of other birds as well, which I haven't featured, but those that you find on Nordy's Neck Pass, you'll also find up here. So I hope you enjoyed that talk. I couldn't go into too much detail, but if you're wanting accommodation, there are 2 quite handy websites for you to find places to stay. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the African Bird Fair and to Hidden Gems South African Birding Destinations. In this presentation, I'm going to be chatting to you about Sutduring Nature Reserve, a small conservation area in the Free State, central South Africa. Sutduring gets its name from the sweet thorn tree, which is very common in the area and also in the reserve. In December 2020, Sutduring Nature Reserve had a very special visitor. This was in the form of a vagrant male Madagascan cuckoo, and as a result of the presence of this bird, Sutduring was put very much on the birding map. A number of people visited it for the first time, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit about this reserve, which is indeed a hidden gem in the birding world. Where is Sutduring? Well, if we look at a map, there's Bloemfontein in the central Free State, and just to the northwest of Bloemfontein is the reserve, and it's a mere 30 kilometers drive from the city and from the N1. What does Sutduring have to offer in the way of bird life? Well, in a good morning's birding in summer, be it early to midsummer, up to 120, or if you're lucky and find a lot of species, 150 species are possible during such a morning's birding. That might come as a surprise, but it's the diversity of habitats in the reserve that is responsible for this tremendous diversity of bird species. The reserve has also had its fair share of interesting visitors, vagrants, and migrants in recent years, and I'll be touching on some of those as well. Let's take a closer look at the reserve itself and the different habitats that we can expect. The area that is indicated here in blue is essentially open water and shoreline of the Krugersdrift Dam. During times when water levels are high, the dam pushes back into the shallower areas and provides nice shallow sections of the dam for wading bird species. So the open water can be either fairly deep or very shallow, and then of course this includes the exposed shoreline of the dam. The next area indicated in yellow is essentially open grassland, and much of this is pure grassland, but sections are contain a drier grassland with an influence of karoo vegetation in the grassland as well, small karoo bushes and patches of bare earth. The area bordering the Modder River is perhaps the most diverse in terms of vegetation, and this riparian thicket and closed woodland is host to a number of different bird species, and we'll be looking at that too. Included in this area are the reed beds that line the river. Let's start straight away with the open water of the Krugersdrift Dam. As I mentioned, during high water levels, the areas of the dam that are usually dry become inundated, and these are highly productive, producing a lot of food, and this is where large concentrations of various bird species occur. Waterfowl are well represented in Sutduring. Ducks, geese, and the example I've used here is just a South African shelduck, and they're very, very impressive and beautiful birds. This is a male in flight, and very often they're present in fairly good numbers. Other birds that share this habitat, the open water, include the inland tern species, the small so-called lake terns. This is a whiskered tern, which is a breeding resident. And in summer, the numbers of whiskered terns are significantly supplemented by the Palearctic migrant white-winged tern, which may be present in very good numbers. We're also fortunate to have a fairly good population of Caspian terns, our largest tern. These birds with their large red bills, it's always good to see them cruising up and down either the river system or over the open water or the shoreline. As far as waders are concerned, black-winged stilts are very common, and the less common pied avocet is also found at Suduring Nature Reserve. Stunning birds to see with their pied plumage and their interesting feeding behavior. As far as herons and egrets are concerned, there are a number of species here, including the massive Goliath heron, our largest heron, which is fairly common in the reserve and along the water bodies. Glossy ibis is also encountered in the reserve, and it's always good to see the impressive iridescent plumage of groups of these birds. If we're looking at the waders, the smaller waders, we're fortunate to have a number of Palearctic migrant wader species coming to Suduring, and this picture shows a mixed group of rough curlew sandpiper and little stint. Nice to be able to distinguish between these waders in terms of their size, their bill shape and length and color, and the legs, etc. All of these things are important for identification. As far as the other smaller waders are concerned, species such as three-banded plover, Kittitas plover on the left, and on the right we do get the occasional common ringed plover, another one of the Palearctic migrant wader species. Both flamingo species, greater with the pale bill with the dark tip and lesser flamingos, are sometimes present in good numbers, particularly in the shallower water areas of the dam. The African fish eagle is a resident in the reserve. There are a number of breeding pairs, and it's always good to see this impressive raptor flying over or to hear it calling. We've been very fortunate in recent times to have enjoyed large flocks of black-winged pratincoles, another Palearctic migrant. Southern Africa during our summer is host to probably a large proportion of the world population of this species, and it's great that large numbers of them, and very often in impressive flocks, occur within Suduring Nature Reserve, using the wetland habitats for roosting and resting, and then foraging in their wheeling flocks over the open grasslands. Also present at times around the shoreline of the dam on the short grass areas is the Namakwa sandgrass, and this species has also been known to breed in the reserve in these areas as well. We move on to the grasslands. Sometimes the grasses grow quite tall after good rains, and these grasslands are home to a number of interesting species, including the secretary bird, and there are a few pairs resident and breeding in the reserve. And as far as raptors go, the black-chested snake eagle, a young bird pictured here, is commonly seen hunting over the open grassland. Other large raptors that may be encountered include martial eagle and booted eagle. The orange-eared francolin is usually identified by its distinctive call, but these birds are fairly common in the grassland, and a number of family groups occur and hold territories, and it's always wonderful to hear them calling early in the morning. We have a number of Koran species that occur, northern black Koran and blue Koran. The northern black pictured left, top left here, is the common species. Blue Korans occur in lower numbers. The male at the bottom with the white on the face and the female with the chestnut. And it's always lovely to see them and to hear their evocative calls usually during the early morning, but normally when they take flight, they also call. Suduring is also home to Ludwig's bustards from time to time, these large bustards which stride across the veld, and very occasionally we also have Corey bustards there. Now on to the LBJs, and Suduring is well known for its LBJs, larks, pipits and cisticolas, and I'm going to just showcase a number of the lark species. This is the eastern clapper lark, a very richly colored bird, And these birds are well known for their clapping displays and their whistled song phrases in display as well. They are the commonest lark at Suderung, and you hear them very, very frequently during summer. In seasons of good rainfall, this is another bird that is very special to Suderung, and that is the melodious lark. And they are frequently seen and heard in display over their territories in the open grassland. They have this very distinctive shape and form when they're in flight display, and fly around with very shallow wing beats, uttering their melodious songs, which include mimicry of many, many different bird species. A fabulous bird to have in the reserve. Pink-billed lark is another special bird that it's possible to see. They are resident individuals in the reserve, and although not in large numbers, it is possible to find the beautiful little pink-billed lark at Suderung. If we move into the areas with more of a karoo influence, with small bushes and bare patches of open ground, the other lark species that occur here include the family groups of spike-heeled lark with the short tails, and large-billed larks with their very gentle, faint, squeaky gait song phrase. These birds perch on top of these small bushes, uttering their song phrases, and are usually found in pairs. Also in this area, particularly where there's very little grass or very short grass, is the red-capped lark, again occurring usually in groups, and one of the most easily identifiable of the South African larks, with the reddish-brown cap and shoulder patches. Grey-backed sparrow larks also move in from time to time, a male pictured here. They are not resident, but good numbers of these birds can be seen in the reserve at certain times. Another very common bird to find in these karoo areas, well, areas of grassland with a karoo influence and open patches of ground, are the double-banded coursers. Strikingly patterned birds. They are always to be found in certain areas in the reserve. And the blue crane, our national bird, is also seen from time to time. They are not resident, but small groups of them do move through the area. And yeah, it's fantastic to see these birds when they are around. Other birds found in this area include the Karoo scrub robin, one of two scrub robins found in the reserve. Its call usually alerts us to its presence. And then on the bottom right is one of my favorite birds, the exquisite little rufous-eared warbler, one of our special near-endemic species. And they've got quite a bit of attitude as well. When they are calling, which they do quite often, they'll often sit in the top of a bush, and so they are quite conspicuous and easy to see. If we now move to the ecotone, the region between the grasslands and the thornfelt areas along the river, there are a few species that seem to like this area in particular, and this includes the rufous-napped lark, which perches on small bushes and trees while uttering its song and showing off and giving its display. The Sabota lark is also found in these areas, usually where the trees are slightly taller. And then we have two Palearctic migrant shrike species that come to the reserve in summertime, the red-backed shrike on the left and the lesser grey shrike on the right. And all of these two species, together with a number of others, require perches from which to seek out their prey, and then they fly down and pounce on the prey before returning to their perches. If we move into the thicket areas along the river, the woodland and dense thickets, this is perhaps the most diverse area with the highest diversity of bird species. We have a number of cuckoos, including the Jacobin cuckoo, the Diederik, and red-chested cuckoos, which are quite common in summer. We have white-backed mousebird and red-faced mousebird. There are breeding colonies of white-fronted bee-eaters along the river in the sandbanks, And once breeding is finished, these birds disperse into the neighboring woodland and thicket areas, and any visit to Sudurung usually provides good sightings of this species. And then the other scrub robin is the Kalahari scrub robin, which is found more in the more vegetated areas along the rivers. We have a number of flycatcher species, including the little prairie batis, which is very much a species of the more arid parts of our region. That's the male. And the diminutive fairy flycatcher is another one of my favorites. Very busy, active little birds, actively foraging in the canopy of trees, and a photographer's nightmare. They're really difficult to capture because they move around so fast. The black-chested prinia, this is a non-breeding winter plumage bird. They lose their broad black chest band that they have in summer. They lose it in winter, and all that remains is some dark streaking. So not to be confused with the tawny flank prinia, which doesn't occur in this area. And then the common white-eye here is the orange river white-eye with the peach-colored flanks. They're very affectionate little birds, and they're often seen sitting in pairs, preening one another. There are also good sources of seed in the thicket areas along the river, and this provides food for a whole host of seed eaters, including canaries, such as the black-throated canary with the yellow rump, the yellow canary, male pictured here, as well as the scaly-feathered weaver, or the Bart maniki. Fun little birds, very active, as well as a number of other small seed eaters in the waxbill or strilded finch family, birds such as the green-winged Partilia, a male pictured here, another male, this time a black-faced waxbill, a red-headed finch, which is a common species, and then a red-billed firefinch. We also get the Jamison's firefinch, but it is much rarer than the red-billed. And then finally, just along the river systems, we have extensive reed beds, which are host to a number of warbler species, including the lesser swamp warbler shown here. This is resident throughout the year, and it's always nice to hear their songs and calls in winter as well as summer. And then the intra-African migrant, the African reed warbler, which is abundant in summer in the reed beds, and sings beautifully as well. And then, but perhaps the star bird of these reed beds is the endemic Namakwa warbler, and there are good populations of this species along the Moder River in Sudurung Nature Reserve. It's a great spot to come and find this bird species. I've already spoken about the wonderful celebrity we had, the Madagascan cuckoo. It was great to share this experience with fellow birders, and many people visited the reserve for the first time and got to hear about the reserve through the presence of this bird, which was with us for almost just on 2 months. As I said earlier, we've had a number of vagrant species, rarities over the years, including a breeding plumage black-headed gull a number of years ago, followed soon thereafter by a Pacific golden plover, and don't have a photograph of it, but we had one of the few buff-breasted sandpipers at Krugersdrift Dam, for one of the few for Southern Africa, and it was great to be able to share in the excitement of that rarity. We have bronze-wing coursers moving through and present here, particularly during wet years. They're not a common sighting here at all. We also had a small group of bar-tailed godwits, which is quite exceptional for the inland water bodies in the central region. We had a group of Caspian plovers. I think there were about 30 of them a couple of summers ago, and it was incredible to see these birds sitting out in the midday heat. The ground temperature must have been in the mid-40s, and they weren't seeking shade or shelter or anything. Quite remarkable. We have the odd ruddy turnstone pitching up, and nice to see these brilliantly patterned and marked birds in the reserve. Lilac-breasted rollers do occur from time to time and provide a splash of color. We had a single grey-headed kingfisher for a few weeks a number of years ago, and most recently a dusky lark was here at the same time as the Madagascan cuckoo, and it was very nice to be able to connect with this bird. It only stayed for a few days. So I hope that you've enjoyed this brief overview of this very special hidden gem, Sudurung Nature Reserve. Who knows, maybe we'll have some other special bird pitching up this coming summer, and you are more than welcome to come and visit this special reserve. Some of our local birders have the saying that Sudurung always delivers, and this is very true. There's always a surprise in store. You never know what you're going to find when visiting this wonderful little game reserve not far from Bloemfontein. And yeah, we'd love to welcome you to the reserve. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope that you've enjoyed the presentation. Should anybody need any further information about Sudurung or other birding spots in the Free State, or indeed other parts of South Africa, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Many thanks and all the best.
The Agulhas Plain, a birding destination that should feature at the top of your bucket list. I am Wim de Klerk of the Agulhas Plain Birding Project, and it is my privilege to introduce you to this hidden gem with which I certainly have a secret love affair. For the past 10 years, I have recorded the birds of this area in this orange area here. It consists of 27 pentads south of the Soetmace Mountains over here, and it's on the most southern tip of Africa, of course, which makes it quite interesting. And it is a relatively flat plain with meandering rivers and an extensive and complex wetland system. Since the start of the Agulhas Plain Birding Project, 282 bird species have been recorded, and the list has grown by an average of 5 species per year for the past 5 years, which explains why I am so excited about this area. From a birding perspective, the habitat is diverse, with an absolutely spectacular coast, a mosaic of prime palestrine wetland habitats with diverse vegetation types. It includes several large pans and flay areas, and eventually reaches the estuaries at the Mont and the Ratelrivier. There are several protected areas in the Agulhas Plain, one of which would be the BirdLife SA IBA, or Important Birding Area, of which you can see the outline here. Then there is the Mont Nature Reserve, which is also a Ramsar wetland site, and you can see the outline on the map here. Just to give you the perspective, this is the road between Bredasdorp and Struisbaai, and this is the Soetendalsvlei. Then we also have the Coin Point Nature Reserve outlined here. And to give you perspective, this would be Agulhas, Struisbaai and Suiderstrand. There is also the Agulhas National Park outlined in orange over here. There's also some smaller pieces of land forming part of the national park. And then there is the special management areas, the Nieuwejaars Wetland SMA, outlined in black here. There you can see the Nieuwejaars Wetland SMA. And then there's also some private nature reserves, the most important of which would be Sandberg Fynbos Reserve, where the button quail is found. There you can see the outlines of the Sandberg Nature Reserve, and to give you perspective, here would be Elim, the town of Elim. If you ask me, your first stop should definitely be the Mont Nature Reserve. Every decent birder should visit the Mont at least once in their lifetime. It is not only a place of beauty, but also one of the best spots for wader watching, especially in summer when the Palearctic migrants visit. Not to be missed is the spectacle of a murmuration of 30,000 plus terns seen during midsummer, which includes common, sandwich and greater crested tern. And there's also smaller numbers of Damara tern, little tern and Caspian tern. For hikers, there is the popular Sterna Trail, which takes you inland away from the estuary and back along the coast. There are boardwalks on both sides of the estuary connected by the famous suspension bridge. Visit preferably from October till March for an optimal experience. A visit you will never forget. To visit Coin Point Nature Reserve, a 4x4 vehicle is required. Find the interesting Coin Point community at the lighthouse, living rights being granted by the late Queen Elizabeth. Look for the 4 cormorant species. This is a reliable site for bank as well as crown cormorant. Other species would be some of the terns and some coastal waders such as common greenshank, bar-tailed godwit, sanderling and ruddy turnstone. Drive east along the coast until you find Coin Rock with hundreds of seals and a bank cormorant breeding site. Entry to the Coin Rock Nature Reserve is from the R317, which is a simple track which is hidden with really poor signage. Next to De Mont Nature Reserve, this is an area that you should not miss. The Agulhas National Park along the Elam Road is literally littered with exciting birding sites. The tracks in white on the map indicates access to the Soedendahlsvlei and many waterbird species such as African rail, swamp hen, black crake, and waders such as the wood sandpiper, curlew sandpiper, and little stint. Herons and egrets are plentiful, and the African snipe rather common in this area. In the open fields to the left, opposite to the flay area, you should look for Denham's bustard, southern black coron, secretary birds, grey-winged franklin, and towards Springfield saltpan, look and listen for the Agulhas larks, the long-billed and the clapper. At the Brandfontein T-junction, which I'll indicate here, you've just birded the flay areas. Now you get to the T-junction and you turn left at the Brandfontein junction, and then you reach the saltpan, the Springfield saltpan as indicated here. Depending on water level, the pan could accommodate anything from 0 to 30,000 waders. It is an incredible sight. Hundreds of greater and lesser flamingo, greater white pelican and pied aphysit is very commonly found there. There is also a Caspian tern roost, but the star of the show for me is the beautiful chestnut-banded plover, which reliably can be found at this pan. This coming year promised to be a good year at this site due to the very good rains that we've had. The Agulhas National Park has a picturesque coastal region worth a visit. Start by visiting the most southern tip of Africa and the historical lighthouse in the town of Agulhas. Driving west on your way towards Suiderstrand, stop at the Rasper, and there you will find a boardwalk which leads you the 500 meters to the coast. Among the stones on the coast, you will find a variety of waders and eventually a large tern roost. Look for the southern chagra and the Cape sugarbird along this coast, and then drive towards Suiderstrand. In the town of Suiderstrand, keep to your right and follow the gravel road that leads to the top of Sandberg, where you might find orange-breasted sunbird, Cape sugarbird, and even the elusive fynbos buttonquail. The Agulhas Rest Camp in Zuiderstrand is a great base for birding this specific area and the coastal birds in this area. The Nieuwejaars Wetland SMA, or Special Management Area, is a protected area where farmers work together and club together to protect over 46,000 hectares of wetland and surrounding fynbos. They've signed title deed restrictions to protect this area into perpetuity. They offer guided, they're very well organized and offer guided birding and wildlife tours in summer to places like Vaskraal, Voelvlei and Langpan, which is the demarcated areas in white on your map. And they have close to 200 bird species on offer. Wildlife such as buffalo, hippopotamus, zebra, eland and bontebok are to be seen, and red-chested and buff-spotted flufftail, African and greater painted snipe, black crake and marsh sandpiper are some of the many water birds and waders to be found here. Also part of the Nieuwejaars Wetland SMA is the Zoetendalsvlei region to the east. Here one can stay at a special birding lodge such as Longerug, indicated by the orange spot on the map, as well as Klipfontein Keep, indicated by the orange lined area. And this site at Klipfontein is where you find a fynbos buttonquail. A good site for fynbos buttonquail. On the Zoetendalsvlei side, the blue-billed teal, striped flufftail, little bittern, and whiskered tern are special species to be found. West of Elim lies the Sandberg Fynbos Reserve, as indicated on the map in orange. It is probably the best site for fynbos buttonquail, but do yourself a favor and join Gerard van Deventer on a Cape Fynbos guided tour. Really worthwhile. While in the area, visit the historical town of Elim with one of the oldest watermills in South Africa. Once again, really worth a visit. The whole town was declared a national monument in 1975 and it now has provincial heritage status. Thank you for your time. I invite you to come and visit us in the Agulhas Plain. Come and do some of the best birding and enjoy some of the best wines and accommodation in South Africa. For further information, please go to the website agulhasplainbirding.co.za, where you will find contact details and accommodation of the area. All the birding accommodation can be found on the website. Join our Facebook, Agulhas Plain Birding, for some posts on the Agulhas Plain, where you will see quite a bit about the birding in the Agulhas Plain. Also, you may also go to the nieuwejaars.com website, where you will find anything you should need to know about the Nieuwejaars wetland. And you can visit the Cape Nature website for the Mont Nature Reserve, as well as the sandparks.org website for the Agulhas National Park. For the Sandberg Fynbos Reserve, go to the Facebook page of Gerard van Deventer. Hope to see you soon. Goodbye. Salagashle.
Thank you to Lynette, Rick and Wim for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. South Africa has an incredible diversity of birds, and I encourage you all to explore the many birding destinations that we have to offer. I would like to thank our platinum sponsors, the AA, Italtal, MSC Cruises, the Ford Wildlife Foundation, and Zeiss for making this event possible. Coming up next at 1 o'clock is a similarly themed session on some of our hidden gems in Africa. Alternatively, on Feeder 2, you can join our panel discussion on birding optics with Swarovski. Until then, make sure not to miss out on the incredible bargains available on our silent auction. Remember to take part in our bird search game and visit the booths of our sponsors and our exhibitors. And if you aren't yet a member of BirdLife South Africa, you can join today at a discounted rate and stand a chance to win a pair of Zeiss binoculars. You can see the details for this on BirdLife South Africa's virtual booth.